morning. I have a prepared statement. I'm sure I'd like to stand up here and talk, but I'll stick to the script. As we all know, the senseless violence in our city continued last night. Tragically, a 12-year-old boy lost his life to gunfire. We have a 16-year-old in the hospital suffering for what are going to be life-altering injuries. As we previously reported after last night, about 8 p.m., officers responded to the area of Atkinson Street and Reynolds Street for the report of shots fired. On their arrival, they located a 12-year-old boy already deceased from a gunshot wound in the street. A short time later, officers located a 16-year-old in the backyard of a house on Prospect Street, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. The first responding officers and bystanders immediately began life-saving aid, including the application of a tourniquet. The 16-year-old was transported to Strong Hospital in critical condition where, thankfully, due to the incredible medical staff, they were able to stabilize him and he is expected to survive. While our Major Crimes Unit continues to do their part to seek the perpetrator of this horrific act of violence, so should our community. We know that there are people out there who know who did this last night. We know there are people out there who have information about what happened. All too often, members of our community simply look the other way and accept the violence around them. No more. This has to stop. Just under 2 months ago, retired Officer Keith Booker was senselessly murdered just 2 blocks away on Jefferson Avenue. We've distributed numerous pictures to the public, and yet his killer remains free. The police department cannot do this by ourselves. We cannot arrest our way out of this. Everyone needs to do their part to fix this plague of violence across our city. The RPD, the hardworking men and women of the Rochester Police Department, have taken over 700 firearms off the streets so far this year, arrested more than 550 people for illegal guns. More than 60 of those have been referred for federal prosecution, all with more than 60 vacant positions in this department. Just this week, we announced our new initiative, our public safety partnership with the Department of Justice, which will bring an unprecedented level of cooperation between the Rochester Police Department and our federal partners. But again, we cannot do it alone. Our community needs to step up and help us hold those who perpetuate this violence accountable. If you have any information regarding last night's murder or any other senseless acts of violence, you need to do your part. Call Crime Stoppers, 911, 311. Our entire community needs to come together to stop this violence. I'm going to hand it over to the mayor, and then I will come back for a few questions.
A 12-year-old child was murdered last night. I have a child that age. Kids that age should be at home playing Roblox. Should be at home playing Xbox. They should be preparing for Thanksgiving. But unfortunately, I want people to understand that this child will not be sitting at that table on Thursday. Sadly, this is becoming all too regular, not only in our country, but particularly in our community, where earlier this year, the first homicide of the year was a 14-year-old child. And I thought that we couldn't get any lower than that. I thought that people would wake up when a 10-year-old child was shot braiding her grandmother's hair, or when the 3-year-old was shot simply sitting in its car seat while a group of folks who had no regard for human life shot at each other. Thankfully, those individuals will be adjudicated in a court of law. What we are seeing is not normal, it's not natural, and we must not normalize it. I can put millions of dollars into the Rochester Peace Collective. I can pay for police overtime. I can have the U.S. Marshals here. We can work with the Department of Justice. We can add pathways to peace workers. But there's a missing element here. And the missing element here is someone knows who did this to this 12-year-old child. I don't have enough police officers to put on every corner and every nook and cranny in Rochester. I just don't. We don't have those resources. And even if we did, that would not stop any person deciding to pick up a gun and shoot someone. Period. I will say to the families that are out here, please know what your children are doing. Now, obviously, this is an ongoing investigation. And obviously, we can't get into any details. The chief's not going to be able to answer who did it and any of those types of things. But I do know this. The streets talk. The streets watch. And someone knows why this 12 and 16-year-old were out late last night, late in the evening, around 7 o'clock, near Reynolds Street, and what happened there. And they need to come forward. We know that the proliferation of illegal guns in our community continues to be a major problem, despite the hundreds of guns that we've taken off the streets. The questions that this community needs to ask, and people who may have information on this case, is what if it was your child? What if it was your baby? And I want to put into perspective 12 years old. Think about it, 12 years old. And I looked at this young man. Birthday on Christmas. He won't be celebrating Christmas with his family this year. So to start the holiday season, we're dealing with this. And I will also add, last week we talked about the trauma that many of our children are facing. And yet again, we have a child that was not only traumatized, but experienced the violence that we are trying to stop. He experienced the violence that we are trying to stop. These tragedies have real-life consequences for our city. They have real-life consequences for his classmates, for his family, and for the cycle of violence that continues to happen. And obviously, we can't go into all the details here, but I will say this, that most of this violence that we're seeing is not by accident or happenstance. It is based upon situations that people are making and putting themselves into. Someone deciding to pick up a gun, or someone engaging in activity that they should not be engaged in. We must get a hold of our young people. It takes the families to get involved. It takes the larger community to get involved. This is not something that we are going to police our way out of. This is not something that City Hall will solve by itself. All of the emergency orders in the world will not stop some of the nonsense that we are having in our community. It just won't. And that's the God's honest truth. And there is not one solution to all of this, it's multiple. And part of that solution is the broader community speaking up when they see something. And I can tell you, last night at 7 o'clock, although it was dark, someone saw something. Someone heard something. Someone knows something. And if we think that this is just the natural order of things, God help us as a society. Because a 12-year-old kid being picked up off the street and put into a body bag for his family to get ready to have a funeral after being shot, when earlier this year, when a 15-year-old was shot and killed, 17-year-old shot and killed, 10-year-old shot, 3-year-old shot, these are not normal instances. And I'm not saying that older people deserve to get shot, but when children are getting shot on a regular basis, that is not natural and that is not normal. Now, we're here giving you a press conference, but I can tell you all the press conferences in the world is not going to stop this. All the marches of folks wanting to mug for the camera and talk about how bad it is. That's not good enough. We don't need any more talk. We need action. We identified what the problems are. We know that we have an illegal gun problem in this community, and we know that we have many young people who are involved in things that they should not be involved in. You can go to the Children's Detention Center. It is filled with young people who have committed murders over this past year who are awaiting trial, who are under the age of 18. Those are larger issues that City Hall and the police department just cannot solve alone. So anybody that gets up and tells you, oh, we got a solution for it, they don't. And anyone that gets up and has press conferences and want to march, I don't want to see any press conferences or marches. I want people to tell me who killed this kid, who was there, what did the car look like, who were they hanging with, where were they going, what were they buying, who was the beef with. All of these are things that people in this community know answers to. I don't know the answer to it. Chief doesn't know the answer to it, but someone out there knows the answer to it. Just like someone knew who killed Julius Greer in cold blood buying noodles and didn't want to come forward, even though we have a reward for that. Or Keith Booker, who was in a motor vehicle accident, somebody decided to shoot him. We need someone to speak up. I'm begging someone to speak up. It's this young man today, and I don't think we released his name yet.
No.
It's this young man today. It could be your child tomorrow. Rochester must speak up. You've seen the public safety briefings. You hear us talk about prevention, intervention, and suppression. You've seen the investments. But I cannot force someone to talk. That is what we must rely on the community. So if you were around Reynolds Street last night around 6:45, 7 o'clock, you saw something. Call 911. Call Crime Stoppers. But the easiest number to dial is 911. Call the mayor's office, 428-7538. Call me directly. Say, Mayor, I got some information. I won't use your name. People have been doing that a lot, and I want to thank people who do that. People have called me about drug houses. We've shut them down. People have called me about stuff that they have seen in other homicide cases. I passed on that information, didn't use their name. You can call me directly. Call the mayor's office if you don't want to call 911. This is shameful, pitiful, and embarrassing on all of us as a society when we are having young children die and they're not going to war, but they're babies. 12-year-old kid. It has to stop. If it doesn't stop, God help us, because who will speak for the children? How are they going to grow up and speak for themselves if they're dead and buried alive before they even reach the age of 18? We got to do better, and people have to speak up. And today would be the day to do it.